Atmapo yena sarvatra samam pasyati Arjuna Sukham va yadi va dukam sa yogi paramo mataha. Lord Krishna said, he is the perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna. So maybe we can repeat the English. He is a perfect yogi, who by comparison to his own self sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna. Report by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. One who is Krishna conscious is a perfect yogi. He is aware of everyone's happiness and distress by dint of his own personal experience. The cause of the distress of a living entity is forgetfulness of his relationship with God. And the cause of happiness is knowing Krishna to be the supreme enjoyer of all the activities of the human being, the proprietor of all lands and planets, and the sincerest friend of all living entities. The perfect yogi knows that the living being who is conditioned by the modes of material nature is subjected to the threefold material miseries due to forgetfulness of his relationship with Krishna. And because one in Krishna consciousness is happy, he tries to distribute the knowledge of Krishna everywhere. Since the perfect yogi tries to broadcast the importance of becoming Krishna conscious, he is the best philanthropist in the world, and he is the dearmost servitor of the Lord. Nacha tasman manusyeshu kaschit me priyakritamaha. Bhagavad Gita 1869. In other words, a devotee of the Lord always looks to the welfare of all living entities. And in this way, he is factually the friend of everyone. He is the best yogi because he does not desire perfection in yoga for his personal benefit, but tries for others also. He does not envy his fellow living entities. Here is a contrast between a pure devotee of the Lord and a yogi interested only in his personal elevation. The yogi who is withdrawn to a secluded place in order to meditate perfectly may not be as perfect as a devotee who is trying his best to turn every man toward Krishna consciousness. Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksim Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Sapadantikam Namaham Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Sarasate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakapatarubhyascha Kripashindu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Well, I chose this verse. This is one of my most favorite verses in Bhagavad Gita because I think it really points to what we need to be doing and what we need to be considering in our Krishna consciousness. Seeing the true equality of all living beings in both their happiness and their distress. So coming to the place of empathy, feeling other people's suffering, is such a beautiful impetus to helping other people. First of all, just feeling some love for Krishna is such a beautiful impetus. I was thinking when I walked into the temple room, you have the most important picture right here, Krishna reciprocating with his dear devotee. And when we feel some sense of Krishna's love, we naturally want to share Krishna's love. And then you have this whole Nava Vrindavan over here. This is amazing. Yeah. I think it's a Nava Vrindavan because there's an elephant in there, so it must be like in the Dwarka mood of a Nava Vrindavan. So it's really beautiful. So thank you for this beautiful temple, maintaining it so nicely, such inspiration. So I was thinking, since we've just been here for about an hour or so, but I was thinking you have the beautiful Prabhupada's room with the most overwhelming display of books with the names of the different languages on each shelf. It's very, very inspiring. But I was thinking, if we don't really realize this first, emulate this first, people won't want to read those books. They won't want, because when you're distributing one of Srila Prabhupada's books, what you're doing is you're sharing your own self. And if people don't see this kind of mentality in a book distributor or anyone sharing Krishna consciousness, why should they feel inclined or inspired to open one of those books? So I find this verse very, very important. In the purport, there's so many different things we could talk about. Srila Prabhupada speaks, really he's talking about his peace formula that he discusses in the last verse of the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, talking about Krishna as this is the first thing he talks about in the purport, understanding, he says the cause of this distress of the living entity is forgetfulness of his relationship with God. So then understanding Krishna to be the supreme enjoyer, everything's meant for his enjoyment, and that everything is owned and controlled by him, and that he's my dearmost friend. So it's really quite deep. To think about that. Like if you think of the most powerful, supremely powerful person, like maybe the head of the United Nations or the head of the EU, some unapproachable type of person that you need an appointment a year ahead or something to even meet such a person, powerful person, or any powerful person you could consider in your life. And then if a person like that was your dearmost friend, what kind of doors might open for you in your life, right? So just imagine the supreme, most powerful person. He's the cause of all causes. He's the origin of all. He's the most beautiful person, the supreme absolute truth. And such a person like that is our dearmost friend, if we can just remember and uncover, sort of excavate that friendship that's there. This is what's waiting for us, right? You look at this painting. That's what's waiting for us. But we just kind of, we chant and we call Krishna's name with, then we, how sometimes you might invite someone to your house, and then what if you're not there, right? You invite someone, but then you don't show up. So that's what we do when we're chanting the holy name in forgetfulness, right? I heard this from Kadamba Kanana Maharaj, that he said, inattentive chanting is a symptom of inattentive life, a symptom of an inattentive life. So we call Krishna, but then we don't show up. So, this is what's available for us, but we don't show up for that embrace. So the fact that he's, I can speak for myself, I'm so dull that even though he is the supreme cause of all causes and the dearmost friend of all living beings, still I'm not showing up to realize that or to remember that. So this peace formula, so realizing those things that, another thing about this painting is that Krishna's greatest quality is, what would you say? What would you say is Krishna's greatest, or one of Krishna's greatest qualities? What do you think? Anybody? What do you think are he has some really great qualities. But what would you say is one of his greatest qualities? His mercy.
His sweetness.
Sweetness. His beauty. You got what? What were you going to say?
He gets tied up in the love of his devotee.
He gets tied up in the love of his devotee. So,
He follows him. Wherever he goes, he just follows him. He never leaves him or her alone.
Nice.
He's so sweet.
He's
no
so
one
sweet.
can adore him.
Thank you.
No one can be so adorable like him.
Yeah.
I know.
So he loves to get defeated by his devotee. Isn't that amazing? So contrast that with us, or I could say myself, I always want to try to control things in this world. I want to tell other people what to do. Have you ever heard someone say, well, I'll give her a piece of my mind? They say that in German also. In English they say, I'll give her a piece of my mind. Well, nobody really wants a piece of your mind. I want to be the controller. I want to dictate. I want to tell my husband. I want to tell my kids. I want to tell my friends. I want to tell everybody what to do. But Krishna's here. He is the supreme controller, but he wants to be defeated by his devotee. He wants to be tied up, as you said. He's so sweet. All of you said such beautiful things. His mercy, his sweetness. So such a personality is making himself available to us. But we feel, I have something else to do that's more important. So I think this verse is really important. Last night I had a chance to speak at an interfaith dialogue in Brussels. It's a small little interfaith center that's connected to a Catholic church. And they had I think they called it a prayer for peace event. It was really a beautiful event. And there were Catholics and Protestants and Muslims and a Jewish rabbi there. People lit candles and people spoke about their ideas of peace. So I think this verse is very intrinsic also to the Krishna conscious idea of peace, trying to consider the pains and pleasures of other living beings as being parts and parcels of Krishna. So Prabhupada gives this, sort of certifies this peace formula, but this is another aspect of that peace. So I spoke a little bit, and what I said last night was, I talked about 3 different aspects of peace. That I thought maybe the peace formula, that chapter 5, verse 29, might be a little bit too subtle for people to get. I only had 10 minutes. So I talked about 3 aspects of peace. Peace within ourselves, peace between ourselves and others, and peace in the world. And I thought that would be important to try to convey. So, first of all, peace within ourselves. So I think this verse speaks quite a bit about peace within ourselves. We were talking when we came in about Kadamba Kanana Maharaj and his instruction to his disciples that he would like, as he was exiting this world, gave the instruction that he wanted his disciples to be known as kind. So what we were discussing, some of us, is that if he had said he wanted his disciples to be known as fired up or, any number of other things, it would be easy to kind of fake that. But to be kind is really something very authentic. And it's a sort of a moment-to-moment endeavor, I would say. So, this idea of, by seeing the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and distress by comparison to my own self, right? Understanding how I feel when I'm neglected or rejected or dissed or put down or dismissed. So trying to extend whatever kindness is important to me, try to extend that to others. And, we all have a chance in a temple community. For me, the most sad thing in a temple is when you meet someone and you say, "Oh, have you been here before?" And they say, oh yeah, I was here once 6 years ago, but I never came back because nobody talked to me, or something like that. So, to extend the kindness that we ourselves would like to be receiving, to extend that. And to also to understand that in a temple community, it's a strange atmosphere for most Western people who kind of walk in the first time. So to try to be an ambassador of Krishna and try to help remove the obstacles or smooth the path for people to be able to connect with this beautiful mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. So so some thoughts on this verse, and then more about peace within myself. So simplicity, humility, these are different principles that are discussed in Bhagavad Gita. If I like to call it the satisfaction of sacred smallness. If we're always trying to become big and important, and but if we can just remain small and do some humble service, even if we're doing something very large, to do it in a mood of humility is a very sacred thing. So simplicity, what I mentioned last night is that Gandhi said that there's enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. So this is discussed in Ishopanishad also, that everything in this universe is owned and controlled by the Supreme Lord. And to not take what more than what I require, understanding well to whom everything belongs, right? So simplicity, humility, that's within myself, and also comparing myself. What gives me pain will give someone else pain, right? And then peace between ourselves and others. Acting without violence, seeing the sacredness of all living beings, acting without violence, and acting in dharma, acting in a righteous way, trying to act in an exemplary way, which is not always easy, but trying to live in a way that's exemplary. So those are two aspects of peace between ourselves and others, and then peace in the greater world, like bringing peace into the greater world. I would say that Bhagavad Gita 5:18 talks about that, seeing the same sacred spirit soul in all living beings, seeing that same in a dog eater, a learned Brahmin, every living being, that same sacred spirit soul is present and regarding everyone as sacred and beloved to Krishna. Bhagavad Gita, we talk often about the instruction to accept a spiritual master, Bhagavad Gita 4:34. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. But the next verse, 4:35, says, so what do you learn when you approach a spiritual master? What is the truth that we learn that all living beings, Krishna says, all living beings are in me and they are mine. So, wow. To me, that's so beautiful, that every living being, no matter how they're crawling around this earth, is precious to Krishna, is Krishna's beloved. So to regard all living beings like that, I feel like those are aspects of peace in the kind of macrocosm. So those are a few thoughts. Oh, just one other thing before. Also, I think Prabhupada is speaking about Prahlad Maharaj in this purport, where Prahlad Maharaj in his beautiful verses in the 7th canto, Prahlad Maharaj is saying, he sees so many yogis and munis who are focused on their own spiritual advancement, living in caves or living off somewhere in the Himalayas. But he feels the pain of so many people who are suffering in this world. So therefore, Prabhupada's whole mission is in Zurich, in London, in New York, and in these places where the people are out of compassion. So those are a few thoughts on this verse and purport. Would you like to share?
Yeah, I will. So the translation again. He's a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self or herself, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, or Arjuna. Prabhupada packs a lot in the purport. I'll just reflect on a couple of things. I was at a law conference of devotee lawyers in Bhaktivedanta Manor in London the last couple of days. So they were discussing some of these thoughts, and I'll share with you. So here, it's an emphasis. There's several verses in Gita that kind of emphasize the oneness of all living beings. So here it's saying one who's in knowledge sees the true equality of all beings, sees that equality, that oneness is there. So just some kind of contrast. We know that at least in modern Western philosophy and culture, really the emphasis is always on the separateness between spirit and matter. In terms of our culture, very much culture, we all come from cultures that are, Switzerland's a little more peaceful than most, but still it comes from cultures that are based on trying to exploit matter, thinking that we're the dominant. If you go back in some of the early Christian ideas, these days they're trying to, they interpret it differently, but the whole idea that humanity has dominion over everything else, the fishes and the seas, and it kind of creates a very exploitative mentality. And one of the lawyers was presenting from Gorny Tai from Ireland. He had quotes from these various Western philosophers who were saying it's completely an illusion to think that animals or other living entities experience pain or pleasure. It's just ignorance, and they're just things, and just do with them what you like. That was the paraphrase. So that's kind of been not entirely, but the dominant Western idea, at least in modern times. And if you look, say, the East and many Indian traditions, they emphasize differently. They talk about the oneness of all beings. A lot of times, you see posters, I'm sure, around town. Come and hear so-and-so Swami speak about the oneness of all that is. And oftentimes you try to get a sense of, well, can we go a little deeper about the nature of the oneness? And usually the answer is you just have to become one with the oneness. And there's an emphasis on that. So here in this particular verse, the oneness is emphasized. But we understand in Vaishnavism, in our Krishna conscious philosophy, Lord Chaitanya particularly emphasized simultaneously one, so we, conscious living beings, the soul, we are one with everything, but at the same time separate. Oneness and difference. So this is a very quite profound philosophy and understanding that gives us guidance how we can live in this world. We see, like we live in North America, so over the last few years there's been a lot of coming aware of the horrific exploitation of the native peoples by the Europeans that came there. They, at one point in time, they were taking all of the young native, what they call Native Americans, or in Canada they call the First Nation people. They were literally taking the children from their parents at a young age and sending them to boarding schools against their will, cutting their hair, and forcing them to speak their native languages, to the extent they would put pins in their tongues if they were caught speaking their native language. And horrendous exploitation, because they're trying to break the culture. Because there was a sense that our culture is better than this. And they thought they were doing good for those children, although, we can see now it's horrific. And the church and the governments, they're all trying to figure out how do we make up for this, and, in hindsight, what horrible way to treat people. But it comes out of this sense of being better than others, so therefore we can exploit them. And, as Americans coming to Europe, reminded about, like we see some of the tension between India and the West these days, and oftentimes it's put in terms of overthrowing the colonial mentality. There's still a sense, the British conquered us, the Mughals conquered us, and we have to throw over that mentality of exploitation. So because of the duality, thinking that, one race is higher than another, one culture is higher than another, one gender is higher than another. Rukmini was telling me at this same church, right? You went, there was a painting, go ahead and explain it, whatever, somebody with their head on a woman or something like that.
Oh yeah, the cathedral in Brussels. They were celebrating the work of some monk from, I'm not sure what century, maybe about 16th century. So they were celebrating his work of bringing down the kind of modern women who are starting to think that they should have some rights in whatever that period was. And they actually had a statue of him, a sculpture of him, and he had his head on the foot of a woman. So there I think he might have had a sword or something in his hand, but he had his foot on the head of a woman. And this is his cause, what's the French word? Cause of celebration.
Cause de célébrer.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So
This was his contribution to the world, that he was bringing down the advances of women. It's very interesting.
And even even where we live in the States, there's some question about some of the stained glass windows in some of the cathedrals. And of course, America's not so old, so they're not ancient cathedrals, but they're showing the conquering of the native people, the poor people being uplifted by the higher culture of the West and all that. So some cultures historically stress duality, some philosophies stress the oneness, but in Vaishnavism, we had this philosophy, as described here by Krishna, of seeing the oneness of all living entities, to try to be free from the tendency to exploit others, to see others as different from myself, but to see actually we are one in quality, as described in the purport and elsewhere in the Gita. We're all spiritual beings, and we are one in that. Like sometimes they talk about one human family, and we would say, well, why just human family? One family. The whole world is full of so many living entities and different bodies and different types of species, but there's a oneness there. We're all individual spirit souls. But the duality is that we are individuals. So today, this is kind of playing out a little bit in terms of, I know again where we are, big battles on how do you deal with the planet itself. And some people saying, well, you should protect the planet, and still some remnants of others saying, no, the planet's there for us to exploit for our benefit. And of course, we see the result is becoming quite serious. So as devotees of Lord Krishna, we very much stress this idea of that, as Prabhupada says, true happiness comes when we awaken love for the divine, as Rukmini was describing this beautiful painting, when we understand our spiritual identity and we awaken our connection with the divinity, that actually helps us, it allows us, we can realize where our true happiness lies. And as this verse is emphasized, we have to be a little careful, because some religious traditions say certain people within our traditions of our Christian friends historically emphasize, well, we're supposed to love God, we're special because we can love God, and therefore everything else is lesser and we can exploit whatever else is there because that's what God wants us to do. So this is not a tendency that's only found in one tradition or another. It's called arrogance. It affects materialistic people and it affects spiritual people. I was speaking with some of the devotees at this conference recently. We were discussing, yes, sometimes you hear about this disease, PDS, Pure Devotee Syndrome. Pure Devotee Syndrome. Which is one starts thinking, I'm so advanced in my God consciousness, that I'm so elevated, I'm so special, that others should bow down to me, or other philosophies are lesser. We see this on the street. Again, I don't know here. We've been to Switzerland for an hour and a half, so I can't say we've observed much other than the traffic trying to go through downtown. That was clear. But sometimes you see people standing on the street corners advocating their particular philosophy, and oftentimes it's out of a sense of superiority. And sometimes as devotees too, we may advocate our particular understanding of Krishna out of a sense of superiority, and not, as this verse is describing, as a sense of connection, as a sense of true equality. Just like Prabhupada gives the example, if you see a child on the roof, like in India, sometimes they'll fly their kites on the roof, because in a crowded city there's not much space, so the children will go on the roof and they'll be flying their kites. Try to get your kite to fly, you got to run with it. pull it on the string and then the wind so they'd be running. But if someone down below sees a child's getting too close to the edge, they'll call, stop, you're getting too close, it's dangerous. Out of a sense of affection, not out of a sense of exploitation. So important lesson for us in this verse that as we commit ourselves to a process of awakening, as Rukmini said, happiness inside and happiness with others, or sense of what's the needs of the self, what's the sense of the others. We also, as Krishna says elsewhere in the Gita, yat karosi yadasnasi yat dahosi dadasi yat tatparat kunteya mat kurushva mararpanam. All that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as any austerity, should be done as an offering unto Him. So, as we're awakening our spiritual life, we should, according to Vaishnavas, not that we think, okay, we are connected with God, everything else is not, everything else is lesser, everything else is for us to step our foot on. Or simultaneously that we think that this world has no value. Sometimes we read, it's explained, this is the lesser energy of God. This world is the world of Maya, the world of illusion, so it doesn't matter. Things don't matter to us because we're becoming transcendental. But actually things matter to us more because of this verse, understanding the true equality of all living beings. So in this way, as devotees, we're simultaneously working, praying, following our process of sadhana bhakti to awaken our love of Krishna. And at the same time understanding, if I awaken my love of Krishna, if I'm understanding every living entity is a part and parcel of Krishna, at the minimum my respect for others, as Lord Chaitanya said, must be evoked. He said you can't even chant the holy name if you don't respect others. What to speak of affection for others? So simultaneously, Prabhupada has said that if a certain percentage of the world was to become Krishna conscious, he said 5% or something like that, then the whole world would change. And I think at least a part of this is a symptom that when we get on the bus every morning, if we're understanding the bus driver is a part and parcel of Krishna, and is due respect and is my brother or my sister, forgetful in understanding their connection with God, but that I understand that he or she has a connection with God, I'm trying to please God, he's also God's servant. How can I be anything other than respectful and pleasant to that person? If I'm working at a grocery store and standing in line for 14 hours a day, but at the end of the day I'm getting a little tired, but if I'm remembering everyone is devotee of Krishna, then I'll be respectful and I'll be kind, as you said, and as Kadambakanda Maharaj is explaining. If I'm an employer, which as our society grows, when she and I first became devotees, everybody lived in the temple. All the men wore that color, such a beautiful color. There was no other color, really, in the temple. And because we're all renunciates, there were very few people living outside with businesses or anything, working or anything like that. But now there's so many devotees that have businesses, so the employees of the company owned by businesses, that should be like, they have, sometimes they're rated the best, at least in the States, the top 100 places to work, right? We should win every one of those. People should start saying, wow, isn't it amazing? All of these 93 of the top 100 companies are owned by Vaishnavas. What is this saying? And people should start thinking, I have to hire somebody for work. Well, who are you going to hire? Well, there's two people and one's more qualified than the other, but this one's a Vaishnava. I know he or she's going to be like really loyal, hardworking because they're going to do their work as an offering to God. I think I'll hire that one. Or, these days sometimes people, they don't want the Hare Krishnas on the same block because they're afraid we're going to make too much noise at 4 o'clock. But word should get out. No, actually the Hare Krishnas, those are the nicest people. They take care of their building the best. They're all very pleasant. They keep the thieves away because they're up at 2 o'clock in the morning, walking around the neighborhood like that. They should think like that. And it should be true. This should be true. Devotees should be the best parents. Devotees should be the best children. Not just that we're the best pujaris, but we don't care about the rest of the world. And especially in this context, coming up, this was part of what this conference was about, with the environment around us, that devotees, we should be the most conscientious. I'm working with a group of devotees, we call the ISKCON Green Team, or ISKCON Environment Initiative. You can look it up. ISKCONenvironment.org. If you're interested, there's a nice website, ISKCONenvironment.org. Because we're understanding that, hey, devotees, we should be the best environmentalists too. Because if we care about Krishna, this world is Krishna's energy, how can we not care about it? Sometimes we may think, we're in the temple, Krishna's there on the altar, Prabhupada is here, but the minute you walk out the door, okay, it's Maya. Everything out the door is Maya. Well, in a sense it's Maya, but who's Maya? It's Krishna's Maya. Right? And if it's Krishna's Maya, then I have to treat the material energy with respect. The only Maya is if I forget that Krishna is connected. That's the Maya. Or the illusion is I walk out the door and I think it's not connected with Krishna anymore. Krishna consciousness means I walk out the door and I see how it's all connected with God. It's all connected with Krishna. And it changes the way I interact with everything. It doesn't happen automatically, but it's something we have to work at a little bit because our mind and our senses are, We took a train from London. We took a car ride and then waited at the train station. Then we took a train and waited at the train station. Then we took another train, very crowded train station. And then we took another car. And at the end of that, it was like, it's hard to be compassionate to others. Because the mind and the body are screaming about all the reasons why people should be nicer to me, or don't they realize my pain? But devotees, the yogi described other verses, the yogi controls their mind and their senses out of a mood of service of others. So that we have to practice and we can come to that platform. But here Krishna is giving just a beautiful verse. He is a perfect yogi. So many people practicing yoga these days. So we can think, have you perfected your process? Oh, what does it mean, perfecting your process? Well, are you seeing the true equality of all living beings compared to yourself, both in their happiness and distress? And, of course, related with that is, are you concerned to try to alleviate that distress, both in the short term and the long term? As devotees, we're primarily interested in helping people alleviate the long-term distress, but that doesn't mean we ignore the short-term distress. Or it definitely doesn't mean we increase the short-term distress because we're only concerned about the long-term distress. We should better be concerned about the short-term, the medium-term, and the long-term. So this is just a few thoughts on this verse. It's a really beautiful verse and beautiful purport. So maybe we take some questions?
Yeah.
Should we take questions?
Yeah, we should take questions. I just, hearing what you were saying, I was just thinking about how Prabhupada was such a radical personalist. And sometimes we know we have a very personalist philosophy, but in our interactions we can be sometimes very impersonal. And I'll just share one nice story of Srila Prabhupada I hope we can have some questions or reflections, but Srila Prabhupada Satsvarupa was a new devotee. He was Stephen at that time. Later he became a sannyasi and a guru, Satsvarupa Das Goswami. But he was invited to take part in the first initiation, and he is a very humble person, and he didn't feel qualified, so he didn't show up for that initiation. But then the next night he was every week bringing he was typing up Prabhupada's manuscripts, and Prabhupada would dictate, and then he was typing it up. So the next night he came with this completed work to give to Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada came to the door as he would always do, and he accepted the work. And then Srila Prabhupada just looked at him and said, "If you love me, I'll love you." In other words, this is not just a mechanical thing that I'm going to just, do the RT mindlessly or do anything mindlessly. It's about an exchange of love. So Srila Prabhupada was really such a radical personalist, and I think that's what this verse speaks to that we are meant to be radical personalists and really reach out and touch people's hearts by our kindness. And where is that kindness coming from? From loving Krishna and seeing Krishna's beautiful, loving embrace. So these are a few thoughts, and please, what was important for you, or do you have any reflections, or do you have any questions, or any complaints?
Can we open a little window just to get some air?
Anything you want to argue with about what we said? Yes.
This is Switzerland, they don't argue, they're very neutral. So, it's
They
not
might
a culture.
express their opinion silently later, but not argue. A place of neutrality. Yes.
Now she's a lawyer, she may argue.
Thank you very much, Mother Rukmini and
Thank you.
I just had a question, something I reflect upon a lot, or at least I try, I endeavor, is that every individual who takes to the path of Krishna consciousness and also seeing other examples around me, I do aspire to be perpetually kind, and sometimes I feel our process is so much about being conscious.
Let me just repeat for this recording. So Devashri Radhika is talking about how she's trying to be, aspiring to be perpetually kind. Is that how you put it? Perpetually kind to others.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And when I hear of, like you described, how we have to be very conscious of the fact that, I guess that's what Krishna consciousness is about, that you have to always be so alert and conscious.
Be alert and conscious. Krishna consciousness is about being alert and conscious. Yeah.
And if I were to very honestly admit, there are times when I feel like I cannot do it.
She's saying that she can honestly admit sometimes she feels like she can't do it. Yeah.
And then the question arises that how do I imbibe in myself these qualities where it's never a choice, it's an automatic or an ingrained habit to be Krishna conscious, to be kind, compassionate, and also aware and seeing everybody and caring for them.
Yeah. How can we step out of ourselves and be conscious and be caring for others? Yeah,
All the time, she
all the
said.
time, yeah. We were just in the UK at Bhaktivedanta Manor, and they have a nice something called the School of Bhakti, and they have a sign on the wall as you walk from the temple room and toward the bathrooms. They have a sign on the wall that says something like living with gratitude, giving with compassion. And it's really nice because it's right on the hall. You have to pass it every time you walk back and forth. But I was reminded of a quote, and by that sign and by what you're saying, that so the school. What is the School of Bhakti? The School of Bhakti is a school of gratitude. Actually, it's a school of gratitude. And you're an academic, right? You like to study. So in this school, what do we learn? We learn love. In that school of gratitude, we learn love. And what degrees do we get? So you're working on a PhD. So the degrees we get in the school of gratitude are degrees of aliveness. So, sometimes people say that before we can become Krishna conscious, we have to just become conscious, as humanly conscious. Not walk by that person who we see as somehow suffering, or, like maybe I'm enthusiastically running into the temple for the kirtan, but I see that someone is somehow looking very depressed in the corner. Or sometimes we hear stories that someone I know or someone I heard about took their own life, and people say, "Oh, I wish I had said something. I wish I had noticed. I wish I had, was there something I could have done?" So sometimes, we get those little messages from Super Soul to not just walk on by, right? That, just to pay attention to those reminders from Super Soul, those degrees of aliveness, and reach out to help when we see someone. Because sometimes someone's just frowning or a little bit sad, and if you can just, I think part of it is that we have so many services. It's a high intensity ISKCON movement, right? We're busy distributing books and doing so many things, but sometimes we don't take that moment to stop and recognize, is there something I can do? And sometimes just that one gesture can actually save someone's life, can change someone's life. So sometimes it's just a matter of slowing down and taking a pause and being conscious, reaching out that, I notice that something's troubling you. Is there anything I can do? And then someone may feel that here's someone I can trust. And, there's so many sad stories. The world is full of sad stories, right? But that radical personalism, I think, is a trajectory of the future. I was sharing with you my most favorite story of Prabhupada earlier, if I can share it again. So, Srila Prabhupada was in New Vrindavan, West Virginia in the U.S., and this new devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, is there any service I can do for you? And Srila Prabhupada said something very amazing that I hope you'll remember if you forget everything else we said in this class. Here's something really, truly amazing from Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada said, yes, you can go where I will not go. And this devotee was really amazed because Prabhupada was going everywhere. Here he's in West Virginia, North America. He'd just come from Japan and Texas and California and Chicago, and now he's going to New York, London, Germany. So he said, but Prabhupada, you go everywhere. Where is it that you won't go? And Prabhupada, and this is the part to really remember, Prabhupada goes, to the future. And he says, and by the way you treat the people there, they will know how much Krishna loves them. Isn't that amazing? So, we're kind of old people. You guys are all people of the future. Mm-hmm. So this is the mandate, really. This is the mission, to go to the future and show the people there how much Krishna loves them. It's not just about how much I love Krishna. It's about how much show Krishna. Show them how much Krishna loves them. Pull them closer. Help them to open their hearts by realizing this picture, this embrace that's available there for all of us. So I think awaken to these degrees of aliveness that are open to us at every moment. What else? Any questions?
The previous verse, I was looking at it as Rukmini was speaking. Prabhupada says, Krishna consciousness is the highest stage of trance in yoga practice. This very understanding that Krishna is present as Paramama in everyone's heart makes the yogi faultless. Mm-hmm. So just having that vision, at least philosophically, intellectually understanding that Krishna is present in everyone's heart. Because part of it is, like you were saying, how we want to aspire for that. The first step is understanding that's part of being Krishna conscious, seeing this oneness, seeing the quality of an entity, accepting that. Because there's, again, such a tendency to see, now I'm a devotee of Krishna and everybody else isn't a devotee of Krishna. My sister's just a lousy Christian. Or my brother's he's a Baha'i, and what do they know about God? You go in their temple, it's a big empty building, or whatever. We tend to see like that. So instead, seeing that actually Krishna is in the heart of every living entity, and I should be respectful and kind to everyone. So if we understand that that's part of being Krishna conscious, that's very important. I've heard Rukmini tell a story before about one of our farms in North America. The school, our kids at the Gurukul used to go swim in a pond nearby, and somebody else's property. And one day some of the other kids that weren't devotees were swimming in the same pond.
That owned the property.
Yeah, that owned the property. So, which were letting us use their swimming pond. So at some point, one of the kids or boys said something like, ooh, I don't want to go in the water because there's, devotees used to with this karmis, there's karmis swimming or non-devotees swimming. I don't want to go in the water. Which is like, oh my God, even our kids are becoming fanatics. The neighbors heard that. That was the end of the Hare Krishnas using their pond. So that was pretty instant karma. But sometimes the idea, sometimes we can think like that sometimes. We do. We have thought like that, and we should, at least philosophically. And it's not like at every moment it's nice. It takes work to try to be kind to everybody.
And who even knows what the word karmi means? I mean, You
You're
know, it
just
just
using them
sounds
over
terrible.
sense.
I mean, I'm a karmi. I don't have pure motivations in serving Lord Krishna at every moment, you know, so yeah, it just sounds terrible. Or sometimes devotees would like to imitate Prabhupada and being very fired up, you know, say things that are way beyond our realization.
In their criticism, whereas Prabhupada himself said, I can say these things, I'm an old man. What is that? Am I doing that? No. Is that the sky falling? Is that? No. Prabhupada says, Prabhupada sometimes say, I'm an old man, I can speak very forcefully like that, but you cannot. Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
Yes. You have your hand up?
No.
No.
But maybe I can just give a comment, actually. I was thinking how I just came from company I work for, and it's literally completely opposite of what we are experiencing here in this wonderful Qatar. Thank you. So it's I was invited there to the after working day party where everybody is intoxicated and completely absorbed in eating meat, and I just ran away basically. And I know that you would
Jai Haribo. Welcome.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to ask you, maybe, is there any meditation you would offer, or maybe you can suggest to me when I'm in the working environment? I mean, I try to be Krishna conscious, but honestly, as Sri Radhika already mentioned in her own way, that's my attempt, but it's really, the moment I enter into that building, I'm completely absorbed by the environment there. So it's super hard for me. I'm consumed by the mentality that's there. And I try my best, but it's more, I'm in a defending mode, and I want to be who I am without, trying to mask that I'm trying to live different lifestyle, that I'm somebody who is not accepting that lifestyle at all, but at the same time, I'm compassionate towards them in a sense that I'm accepting them as they are. I'm not trying to shout something to their throat, but again, show where is the border, or how, I don't know how to say it, but maybe you understand what I'm trying to say.
Is that right again? Yeah, so...
We're discussing who gets to answer your question. It's such a good one.
There are two things that come to mind for me. One thing is I remember reading that Haridas Thakur says in the Harinam Chintamani that it's only really possible to control our minds by the mercy of Krishna. So I would say when you walk into that building, take a deep breath, say a little prayer that Krishna, I'm so small, you're so big, I really need your help to be able to live as a devotee as I'm working in this company, to truly represent you with compassion and kindness. And there's also a beautiful prayer of Prahlad Maharaj in the 5th canto that I used last night in this prayer, in this interfaith dialogue, so I want to share this with you. It's not a literal translation, but it's very, very powerful. So this is the first thing I thought of, actually. It goes something like this. The actual Srimad Bhagavatam verse is what? I forget. 5-9.
No. Prahlad Maharaj?
Yeah, Prahlad Maharaj, but it's 5th canto, 19th chapter, 7th verse. That may not be right, but anyway, this is the translation that one of our wonderful devotees, Ravindra Swarup Prabhu, gave, and he spoke this at a big interfaith gathering a number of years ago. So something like this. May the entire universe be blessed with peace and good hope. You asked for meditation, so this is the meditation that comes to mind for me. May the entire universe be blessed with peace and good hope. May everyone driven by envy and enmity become pacified and reconciled. May all living beings develop abiding concern for the welfare of others. May our own hearts and minds be filled with purity and serenity. And may all these blessings flow naturally from this supreme benediction. May our attention become spontaneously absorbed in the rapture of love for the transcendent Lord. So I would say, before you walk in, maybe when you're sitting in your car, to just take a deep breath and pray to Krishna, please take complete charge of my life. I can't do this. I can't be Krishna conscious while I'm working in this combative environment, but please, you come with me and take charge of me and help me speak on and act on your behalf and see each one of these, forgetful living entities as your beloved. I hope that's helpful.
It's a fantastic question and meditation. I'm thinking St. Francis famously said to his followers that they should preach all day long, and when necessary they should speak a few words.
Or the converse of that is your actions are speaking so loudly that I can't hear a word you're saying. Right?
So, I've been thinking a lot about this lately, and I think that really the temple is the place. Sometimes devotees think, well, the temple is a place I go to become Krishna conscious, and then the rest of the week somehow I have to kind of get by and come back here. I think another way of looking at it is the temple is a place you come to get strength in Krishna consciousness, and then you walk out the door to put it into practice. So, I remember one time was an event, I think it was at the Indian Embassy or the British Embassy at Washington, D.C., and I was talking to a young Indian American man, and there was 2 or 3 young Indian American girls and women, and dressed like they say in English, dressed to kill, just like the guy was looking really debonair and they were just beautiful. And they were talking and he was kind of, showing off, and I was wearing my devotional dress. They were kind of making fun of me in a funny way,
kind of drunk, right?
Yeah, they were a little drunk. They were asking me, like, what are you drinking? It was like, well, Perrier, oh, that's and that, make it, this and that. And there was some exchange. I don't remember the whole thing. But then at some point, I was kind of trying to say a few things, but they were too drunk to hear very much. I was thinking it's a waste of time, perhaps. And then at a certain point in time, the girls walked away. The young women walked away. And the guy had been hearing me kind of talk about, the material life is limited and there's a higher happiness and that's what we're all about. And it was pretty much, they didn't hear a thing, they didn't listen to anything. And then the women walked away and he said, you want to know the truth? I said, yeah. I said, I'm miserable. But in front of these young, attractive women, he was all showing off and, attracting, and they're trying to show off to him. So that's what's going on in the world at large. Everybody's pretending. If it's a corporate environment, everybody knows, like I have a friend in Washington, D.C., works in IT, information technology, worked for a big company. Recently there was a bunch of layoffs, and he made the first cut. And then there was a bunch more layoffs, and he made the second cut. And I saw, I was like, congratulations, you're still there. And then there was a third cut, and he didn't make it. So it's a cut, like they say, it's really a cutthroat. So even in the corporate environment, people that are kind of like your friends, like you don't really know. It's like gladiators. Right? You can be friendly, but you can't be friends because I might have to take you out tomorrow. Yeah, right? Push comes to shove. So we really have a chance to kind of show there's another way of doing it, which people notice. People notice because inside they know it's a bit of a game. They may not be conscious of it, but when they see somebody who even when the others in the office are trying to get the boss's attention, taking credit for what's been done that they didn't do, the devotee's more acting in the mode of goodness, like, okay, I work here, I'm trying to do what's best for the company, this and that. I'm acting in a selfless way. So the meditation is, Krishna, I'm doing this for you. I'm not doing this to please the boss, I'm doing this to please you. I'm going to try to sell this product or market this thing or whatever it is that I do, but I'm actually doing it for you. And I can just share one experience in our young Grihastha life. Gauravani, who she mentions, is actually my stepson, although he's been my son for 40 years. When we first got married, because when you're married, you have kids, you got to play with your kids, right? If anybody's thinking you don't, when you're Krishna conscious, put that idea away. So one time we went bowling, and I was thinking, because I've been a brahmachari for 10 years, what am I doing bowling? You know, and how do you bowl for Krishna? What the heck am I supposed to think about? I got to throw this ball down the alley, and what am I supposed to think about? I'm not selling a book. I'm not worshiping the deities. I'm not chanting japa. So I just had a thought. I thought, okay, Krishna, I'm going to knock those pins down for you. You know? And anybody here ever gone bowling? Did they bowl much here? Okay, so I was not very good bowling. I was like, I think 130 was the best I ever had in my, maybe 150 once with my friends in high school. So I thought, okay, I'm knocking down for you. And so I throw the ball and a strike. I hadn't bowled in 25 years. I thought, okay, so the next time, okay, it's for you, Krishna. Strike. You know, and poor Gauravani's 8. He's like throwing the ball in the gutter, and I'm thinking, okay, so you'll do fine. I'm going to do this for Krishna. And I remember I bowled 215. I never in my life did that. And I just think it was just Krishna kind of like showing me a little something. You do it for Krishna. I think that's the meditation, do it for Krishna. And eventually, people start coming up to you in the office saying, what is it with you? The boss just chewed you out in front of everybody, and you didn't get disturbed. And I don't know if you noticed, but his boss noticed that he lost it, and you didn't. You know, so what happens, some of the management gurus, they talk about circle of influence and circle of concern. Because we're acting in a way that's actually selfless as much as possible, we're actually, you know, I'm helping this company for you, Krishna, you're the owner of this company. Gradually, your circle of influence grows. And your department, you have a few people working, and you say, look guys, we're going to do things differently here. We're going to work as a team. Because, you know, I think everybody here is blah, blah, however you want to introduce that. And, you know, there are management systems that talk about that, that's more selfless. And you start bringing those into where you have influence, and then the environment changes. And those people start performing better. And the other people come, you start, what's with these guys in marketing? And all of a sudden they all have a good time, they're all happy, and they're producing more, etc. So it really does change. It can change.
Can I mention a couple of things?
Yeah, so those two things, you know, it's for Krishna, and preach even when you say a few words, and change that environment. We can change it. I really believe this is, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, Prabhupada's guru's father, Great Acharya, said, when the judges wear tilak, there'll be justice in the court. Now, every judicial system I know of, either you're appointed by some other judges or you voted. It's not just like they're going to say, oh, you're a nice Hare Krishna devotee, we're going to make you a judge. You got to be qualified. But because you've got the qualifications and you've got those devotional qualities, those people are going to rise to the top. So be good at what you do and add, you know, make sure you're Krishna conscious, and you'll see that, you know, next time we come back to Zurich, you're going to tell us, you know, you were right, I'm the executive vice president now.
No pressure.
Yeah. Well, okay, maybe the assistant, the executive vice president.
And also, if you have a desk, if you're working in a work environment and you have any kind of a desk, just have a jar of prasadam cookies, or some kind of prasadam that people can relate to, not something weird and gooey that they think is, you know, comes from.
Inject a little Krishna wherever you can.
Yeah,
There's an office party, maybe they're drinking all kinds of crazy stuff. You know, you can, you know, bring some cookies from the temple and things, and people.
It really makes a difference.
It makes a
Prasadam is and always has been Prabhupada's secret weapon. So prasadam really changes people's
You have a picture
lives.
on your desk or on the wall, you know, people come up at a certain point, you know, certain people will not want to know what that is about. But other people, it's like, what is that picture? Well, that's God and He's helping me. Really? That's why you're so peaceful? Yeah. You want to try it out? Yeah, I got some extra beads in my cabinet. You know, wherever there's opportunity. You can't push it on people. But when people ask you, then you can inject a little bit of Krishna.
Of course, always, you know, carrying a book and, you know, that kind of thing. But I was thinking, we used to have a business in an airport, and there was this one very, very simple little African-American Baptist lady, very simple lady, and her work was cleaning the bathrooms. And she was, when you'd ask her, how are you today? She'd say, I'm blessed. Today I'm blessed. And she really felt like that. And the big executives.
I don't know if they heard the word blessed.
She said, I am blessed. I mean, imagine that consciousness. That's a consciousness of gratitude, living gratitude. And then the big executives would come to her with they're making the 6-figure incomes, and she's making practically nothing, but they would come to her and ask her help and advice with their problems. So, just see that's authentic spiritual consciousness. And I don't personally care that she wasn't saying Jai Prabhupada. She was like Prabhupada's example that when you stick the rod in the fire and it gets cold, the cold iron rod gets warmer, and then you touch it, it's fire. So her consciousness was fire because of her gratitude. So I think if we can carry that consciousness forward, that we can change the future.
And associate with devotees as much as you can. I remember coming to a temple like in my early years of Krishna consciousness and just walking out the door feeling like I'm floating down the road and writing the word Krishna in the snow, and it snows here sometimes, writing the word Krishna in the snow and just singing and feeling happy. And then I get back to my apartment, I open the door and 2 friends were there doing things that devotees don't do with intoxication, and I just felt my brain go, So associate with devotees as much as possible to be strong.
Thank you so much.
Other questions or comments or reflections?
Late.
Yes, Prabhu. We doing okay on time, or are we keeping?
So we come to an end.
Okay, maybe one more.
I mean, also question.
Okay. Well, you tell us.
You have a
We'll
question.
keep going. We'll tell us when to
Okay.
stop.
So you have a question first, Prabhu. You had your hand up.
Yes. So.
Thank you.
In daily. So at the working place, we met people that did not want to know anything about God,
Yeah.
but so and I have a friendship with my work, also people at working place, and
People who don't want to know anything about God.
yes, but we always like to joke and talk about things, so nothing important is there. And my mind thinks if I will pray for them, they can in a later life become Krishna conscious. My
Yeah.
mind thinks.
I'll repeat that for you.
Yeah, so my mind thinks if I can pray for them at a later point in their life, they may become Krishna conscious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a perfect prayer. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
it become true if we?
Yeah. Krishna's hearing your
certainly.
prayer.
Certainly.
And also give them prasadam.
Give them prasadam, Prabhupada's secret weapon. But also, I think also sometimes I myself and others, we think, oh, everything's fine and I'm going through life in a very laissez-faire kind of way. But then sometimes when some suffering comes, then we begin to inquire. And that suffering, let's face it, comes to all of us. So sometimes there may be just a light, joking atmosphere, and you're friendly, you're not acting proud, that you have Krishna and you're better than anyone. But at those moments when some suffering comes, some loss, some suffering, one of those friends may reach out and say, hey, I just lost my brother. I think you do some kind of spiritual something, and how can I deal with this? You know what I mean? And then you have an opportunity. So that's why, to me, that's why what Prabhupada calls pinpricks. Those little pinpricks in our life that You know, like in the American cowboy movies, right? The guy is knocked out and he's fainted, and his friend, wake up, wake up. So we get those little wake up moments to remember.
So keep praying.
Yeah, keep praying. Praying for the opportunity to help wherever you can.
Sometimes you meet Christians, at least in America, they like to say, "May I pray for you?" And I always tell them, "Please. The more the better. I need as many prayers as I can get. Please, please,
Yeah.
please." And then put your hands on your head. "Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy." Lord, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank
Yeah.
you. Say more. I need more prayers.
I think that's beautiful, though, to walk into your office or whatever your work environment is with the consciousness that I'm praying for each one of these people that I have an interaction with today. May I be a blessing influence on everyone I meet today. That's
When my mother passed away, she was cremated at night, and it was at this like crematorium, and it was kind of like being in Transylvania, you know, like with the Dracula movies. And it was dark, and there was only one guy there, and he was kind of weird, and there was this kind of orange light coming out of the machine. I thought, oh, this is creepy. But I was there to, help cremate her body. So I'm talking to this man, and then he told me, he said, I'm the last person to be with every one of these people who's cremated. I'm the last one to be with them.
on earth.
On earth. And he said, and I pray for every one of them. I thought, wow, that's powerful. The guy's in a mortuary. He said, no, it's going to be a crematorium where they burn bodies. But his meditation is, I'm the last person on earth with this person. He or she lived their whole life. They had a family, friends, job, this, that. They had a funeral. Whoever came and said prayers, the family cried and this and that. Now it's me and them before their body's gone. I'm the last person. I pray for every one of them. And I was like, wow, this is fantastic. Please. And I told her, I said, well, I pray too. I'm going to chant our prayer, Hare Krishna. I'm going to chant her. You please say your prayer. I'm going to chant my prayer. And this way we'll try to bless my mother. So it's like, wow, your question, you can work in a crematorium and make a difference, Proof? You had a comment, a question?
I just thought maybe to wind up at the end, if you would like to share some experience with Srila Prabhupada.
The best question.
That you feel is maybe something that we can take with us.
She has so many, because, she came in 68, which was early. Yeah.
What story should I share?
Save and shape.
You want to hear a funny one? Okay, so I'll share a funny story. So this story took place after a Rath Yatra the Rath Yatra was in San Francisco, California. And so one of the BBT artists pulled a copy of Lord Chaitanya. We were sitting in Prabhupada's room after the Rath Yatra, a small group of devotees. And one of the BBT artists pulled a copy of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya off the shelf and said, Srila Prabhupada, when we see pictures of Lord Chaitanya, we see that he had very long hair. And Prabhupada would not...
Which all the men wanted in those days.
Yeah, which everyone wanted.
All the hippies, they didn't want to show their heads.
Prabhupada would not just answer a question, he would answer the mentality behind the question. So Srila Prabhupada said, yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was hippie. and I have to inject this one thing. So what was really funny is that he had just been somewhere else. I heard this later. So he was somewhere else where we were also new, we didn't know anything, but they had Gaurnitai deities, and they had long hair down to their waist. And Srila Prabhupada had just come from this other temple, and he saw that Gaurnitai had the hair down to their waist, and he told Malati, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not a hippie. He should have, hair shouldn't be so long. So then he comes to this next place, and he goes, yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was hippie. He was just considering that. And then he goes, therefore, he has come to save you. But because of his, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Bengali language, but in Bengali, all the S's are more or less SH. So we weren't sure if he was saying, you're Bengali, we weren't sure if he was saying save you or shave you. So Prabhupada just picked up on that, and he's going, yes, he was laughing and laughing, like, yes, save you and shave you, save you and shave you. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to save you and shave you. So that was really funny. Yeah. What about? I'll tell the one of. So this is a nice story of. We'll try to be short here, but there's one crazy. So the first temple in ISKCON was at 26 2nd Avenue. It was a small storefront in a very just off. You familiar with New York? It was about the size of this room, maybe a little bit longer, but in a very
narrow.
Narrow and very terrible location in New York City, right off the Bowery, which is where Prabhupada would be stepping over the bodies of drunks when he would walk into his apartment. Anyway, so he was speaking, and one young man, one crazy, drugged, hippie young man came in. So Prabhupada's Vyasa-san was facing the door. So if you can imagine Prabhupada at the back of the room like here, and that would be the door. So this young man comes into the front door, and Prabhupada was speaking, and he starts shouting, now I want to speak. It's not my turn. It's my turn to speak. He's obviously drugged on something. Yeah, so now it's my turn to speak. I want to speak. And Prabhupada, no one knew what to do. Everyone was so young and inexperienced. So this young man comes in, and then Prabhupada, the way he would deal with this type of thing is, he'd say, let's have kirtan. So then he started a kirtan, and he was having kirtan for about half an hour. And while the kirtan was going on, this young man came to the front of the room and sat down right at the foot of Prabhupada's Vyasa-san. And no one knew what he was going to do. I mean, what is this crazy person going to do? But at the end of the kirtan, Prabhupada would always cut up an apple with a knife or some fruit and distribute the fruit, because no Vedic function is complete without distribution of prasadam. So then he cut up this apple, and he had the cut up apple and the knife on the plate, and he reached out and to this crazy young man. So here's the knife and here's the apple. And Prabhupada just like that, which one will you choose? Will you choose the knife and kill me or kill someone in this room, or will you, such like Krishna's Bhagavad Gita, now I've told you everything, you can do what you like to do. So I wasn't there, but the way I heard the story is everyone was just waiting, as they say, with bated breath to see what this young man would choose. And he's looking at the apple, and he's looking at Prabhupada, and then finally he just chose a piece of apple, and everyone went, I'll tell one more really short one because it reminds me of this one. So Prabhupada, it was his Vyasa Puja, and devotees were coming up and saying their offerings, sometimes full of praise or sometimes maybe some bombastic, the English word maybe. But whatever, they were speaking their words to Srila Prabhupada. And after each one was speaking, there was a devotee sitting at the base of the Vyasa-san, and he was hearing Prabhupada say under his breath after each one, whatever wonderful things they were saying about Prabhupada. This devotee was hearing Prabhupada say, you become, now you become. So whatever you're saying to me, you become that. So just flipping.
So devotees were offering their appreciation, Prabhupada, and you travel around the world, you're sacrificing so much for others, and Prabhupada was saying under his breath, now you become.
Whatever you see me doing, you become that. And should I add even the girls?
Sure, one more story.
Okay, one more. Okay. So I don't know if any of you, maybe some of you saw the movie Hare Krishna, the mantra, the mission, and the Swami who started it all. So I shared this story in that movie, but I'll share it here as well. So again, at 26 2nd Avenue, that first temple, we were in Prabhupada's room, small group of devotees in Prabhupada's room, and Prabhupada was looking into the faces of each one of us like this, one to the next, very intent like that. And he was saying, and I was only 16 years old, right? And so Prabhupada's looking into each one of our faces, and he's saying, I want each one of you to open a temple somewhere. Like to see.
What year was that approximately?
Huh?
What year?
That was 1968 or 69.
Montreal?
Yeah. Anyway, so he, very intently, like throwing out seeds, like who's gonna take one of these seeds? And actually Govinda Dasi tells how Prabhupada would had a globe in his room, and he would point to different countries in the world, say Brahmananda will go to Japan, and Gaurchandar will go to Switzerland, and like that. Anyway, so he's saying, I want each one of you to open a temple somewhere. And I was so young and impetuous, and I said, even the girls? We called him Swamiji at that time. And I said, even the girls, Swamiji? And I was actually, honestly, I was trying to get out of it. And he was just laughing. He said, yes, there is no difference between the boys and the girls. When you are preaching Krishna consciousness, there is no difference between the boys and the girls. And then you like that story? Then he started talking about Janavidevi and how she was the head of the whole disciplic succession, and how the Goswamis were all worshipping her, and she was leading the whole Gaudiya Sampradaya at one time. So he spoke about her at that time. So don't think because you're a girl or a woman that, don't let anyone tell you you can't do something that you dream you can do. Do it for Krishna. Hari Bol. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Thank you for preaching Prabhupada's mission, going to the future, showing people how much Krishna loves them here in Zurich, Switzerland. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Hari Bol.
Jason.